one wants to pay attention. I now see we have true Canadians. A little bit of snow. Someone called me and says, "Are we having this course? It stopped snowing." That was at 2 o'clock. They said, "Where were you?" I says, "I was in the basement." Should have stopped snowing, therefore it did stop snowing. Got to be an optimist in this weather. Anyway, thank you very much for coming. The program this evening, we're going to talk about Purim. We're going to talk about, I'm not going to do the talking. The rabbi's going to talk about Purim, and he's going to talk about his trip to Israel. And this program is being sponsored by David and Ruth Zimmerman in the memory of David's mother, Etka Bas. I'll remember later.
It's a funny name, I'll remember later.
They may not make it. I'll call them to pick them up, but they're not answering the phone, so maybe they're walking over. For those that, I actually had a number of people said, "Are you going to tape it?" So I want to particularly thank David and Frank for stopping over at Josh's house to pick up the tape recorder, and Josh for getting out of bed. He's got a bad flu, stay away from him. But also for coming this evening to make sure that David knew how to run the machine. So tell your friends that they can look at this on the Shul website. Sunday? Will it get uploaded before Shabbos? Before Shabbos. Okay. Thank you very much. That's the and without further ado, there is coffee and there is no hot water. Before it was warm water. There's no hot water. You can have tea. There's one tangerine left.
It's hot. It's hot. The water is hot. Water's hot.
Water's hot now.
You know, in the NFL, the rabbi's talking important stuff. In the NFL, I don't know if all, but I know Buffalo, they have a halacha, very important halacha. And that is that if you want to watch the game at home, they will only broadcast the game if there's a sellout crowd. In other words, they don't want people to say, "Hey, you got to be meshugah to go to Orchard Park in Buffalo on a freezing day. I could just sit at home and watch it on my 68-inch TV. Why should I go ahead and do it?" So therefore, they're going to say, "Aha! If you don't show up, you're not going to be able to watch it at home." So we need 80,000 meshugayim. And with once 80,000 meshugayim are committed enough to the Bills to watch them lose at home, when you have them, then everyone else can benefit and watch it at home. So we were almost going to black out. We had Paul and I decided that if we don't have X amount of people here tonight, it's going to be a blackout. We're not going to record it.
Rabbi, are we in the Shigayim?
I'm not saying it's so garnished. We do. To try to be serious for a few seconds, I do thank everyone for coming. I do thank Ruth and David for sponsoring the Shomer Sharav and Aliyah. And if you have been wondering what kind of shatnez is this to put together a trip with the Prime Minister and the holiday of Purim, what on earth is that all about? I hope to share and express my thoughts in a way that you, at the end at least, agree that there is some kind of connection. You know, visiting Israel is a moving experience if you're awake, if you are alert. And there's a challenge there. I suffered from jet lag this time more than other times. But those moments when you grab the moment, when you realize you are here, you have to touch yourself, touch the ground, you have to feel it. Those are moments that move us. There's no question about it. It moves any thinking Jew. This is the land that God gave us. The history there is to remind us of its significance. Those of us who are alert and realize that the Almighty is doing something quite significant nowadays. So if we have that attitude, every time we see a crane there, and I don't mean the bird, I mean actual cranes, every construction project is one to celebrate. And I mentioned the fact that the great spiritual dwellers of Yerushalayim in the 19th century, we have stories of Rabbi Yosef Zugel from Salant, who would walk on the outskirts of Yerushalayim and cry for the fact that nothing's built around the city. And he would mourn the fact that it's desolate. And if there were those in the past that mourned the void, we have to celebrate the existence. We have to celebrate it. We have to appreciate it. And it's an obligation. We are believers that when it comes to times during the year, you have to be alert and try to grab what that moment is offering. Come a Purim, we have to meditate. Try at least a few seconds, minutes. Meditate what the day is about. Grab the moment and let it have an impact on you. We're going to do it on Pesach, the Seder night. Some of us twice, others lucky enough to do it once. We're going to go ahead and grab the moment of the Seder to feel that cherut, the freedom because we are connected to something greater. It relates to time, but it relates to location as well. There is something we must feel when we live in the land of Israel. I myself have another layer of significance there, and that is I'm aware of the history, I'm aware of the word of the Creator, but I had a childhood in the land of Israel as well. I spent 6 years as a child in the land. I had a love of walking the streets at a very, very young age. As an 11-year-old, as a 12-year-old, I remember walking through neighborhoods and just enjoying it then, and how much more so now. I've been reading recently a book by Amos Oz. Now don't get all excited, I'm not agreeing with his politics, no throwing things please. But he has a description in his tale of love and darkness. He has a description of his childhood in Yerushalayim and how he is walking the streets from Kerem Avraham, which is a neighborhood near the Geula area, all the way to Talpiot, to the house of his uncle, Professor Klausner. And he could describe things like no one else. And I could really experience what he is describing. I have a childhood in the land of Israel. It talks to me. It's an experience. The trip I took in January was unique. It was unique that you could call it energy, or you could call it my ability to not just go through my own personal emotions, but assess what others are thinking. Like the Prime Minister of Canada, like many individuals who are extremely supportive and true friends of Israel. What were they thinking at that time? In other words, my first, when you make contact with the Prime Minister, and I mean by seeing him right after he walks out of the Yad Vashem, and you see Rabbi Lau right next to him. And you know Rabbi Lau, and Rabbi Lau can do a very good job in sharing his history and his experience. And if every tour guide who leads people through Yad Vashem could point to that big picture of Buchenwald in 1945 and say, you see that little child there? He's Rabbi Lau. He became the chief rabbi of Israel. So if that has an impact on every single tourist walking through, how much more so when Rabbi Lau is standing there and he, without a doubt, pointed to the Prime Minister of Canada and said, you see this little child? That is me. And he shares his story of how and what he said to Rabbi Herschel Schachter, that, I'm older than you. We know this story, but the impact was obviously there. So I was experiencing what was taking place in the land far more than with my own personal history, but as a member of a delegation. Among the many striking statements, striking moments, moving moments, was one particular statement, one paragraph from his speech to the Knesset that indicates that he is a man that understands. And what am I referring to? When we analyze what is taking place now in the land of Israel, you know, what's taking place, right? We've been talking for the past 2,000 years, and remember, when you are here and you are with me, you have to step back. Don't look at your life and say, yes, I remember events from the past 60 years or 70 years or 40 years. You have to step back and realize that we have to look at our history. It's our history. You have to step back, and you have to have the ability of imagining the way people thought in the 12th century, in the 13th century, and in the 16th century. And when you start analyzing what your ancestors, what my ancestors were thinking in the 12th and the 13th century, they were praying for a return to Zion. How did they imagine their return? Probably very different than the type of return that the Almighty is working with now. But they imagined a return. Their imagination probably took them to some moment when they will just be working there in the field, or perhaps selling some kind of shmata, or working in a tavern, and they will hear this tremendous blast from the Mashiach, and they're going to all start walking, or perhaps actually climb onto eagles and make their way to the land of Israel. A nice, magnificent structure known as the Bet HaMikdash will come down from heaven, and mission accomplished, they are home. Yemot HaMashiach. That was most probably what was imagined in the past. We're not seeing that exactly. Nothing has come down from heaven. The individual who had a vision about a Jewish state, the Langebort he had, the beard he had, right? But the kippah he did not. That's Theodor Herzl. So we struggled with it. Perhaps not every individual, but as a nation as a whole, we struggled. And how did we struggle with it? You know, different movements developed. Some of them argued that you should know that the image, this messianic image, Herzl, doesn't fit into this picture we had in the past. How can he proclaim, how can a man without a kippah play a role in our return? And then there are others that realize, you know what, the bottom line is they are playing a very significant role in doing one of the greatest mitzvot, getting the people of Israel back to the homeland, back to Eretz Yisrael. Let's play a part. But let's try to manipulate that movement. Let's try to guide them. If we interact with them, if we engage with them, we can go ahead and guide the movement in the right direction. So there's a tension and there's a struggle. And I would love to hear a conversation taking place in the yeshiva in the 1890s. Because I can imagine, and I know they did take place, of a group of yeshiva boys late at night, having this discussion. Yes, but it's about the land of Israel. And the other one responds, what do you mean the land of Israel? But he's not a God-fearing Jew. How can he be? And how can this movement be one that we join? There was tension and there was a struggle. But it is a reality today that we have, Baruch Hashem, a Jewish state. And for those who don't believe that we should play an active role and engage in it, I believe it's a very serious mistake. We must engage with our values. And those that engage with values, one from the more inspiring individuals I do remember, is a fellow who was a member of the Torah Mitzion Kollel in Memphis, Tennessee. And he shares with us the story of how before they are going into Gaza in the 2008 battle, how he was able to guide and inspire soldiers who came from secular backgrounds because they were looking for guidance. They want meaning. If he would have been in the study hall, he wouldn't have had that ability to inspire, to elevate. But he was there with his nice red beard, but he was there with his big kippah, and he was inspiring, and he was elevating, and doing chesed on many, many different levels. Number one, he was protecting the people of Israel, the greatest mitzvah. But number two, at the same time, he was taking the mundane, if you could call it mundane, soldiers who do not have the background, who are doing something very holy without knowing what they are achieving, and he guided them. He told them what is being done. He said verses with them. He said psukim with them. That is considered a great achievement. And that is what we must do, engage. Because it's a reality. The Jewish state is a reality. The more Jewish we make it, the better we are off. That is what we believe. But nevertheless, with this unique situation that we live in, we are living history. Remember that. The Almighty could have taken my soul or anyone else here and could have put me in boring 13th century or in persecutions of the 12th century or in 1348. I am very, very thankful to be here, right now. Why am I thankful? Because there's something historical that's happening. And perhaps we have a responsibility because we are living in this era. But we ask questions. We don't know exactly what is the big picture. What is our status, really? In other words, are we still in exile? Has the redemption really begun? And if it did begin, for example, are we fasting Tisha B'Av? Do we fast? These are interesting questions that might sound crazy, but believe it or not, they were asked a few thousand years ago. And let's go ahead and analyze a period. We're going to do, to hopefully find some bit of understanding for what's taking place today. What we're going to do is we're going to revisit the return that took place 2,500 years ago when our ancestors returned from Babylonia to begin the process of rebuilding the second Bet HaMikdash. And we could go ahead and hear their struggles and their questions. And when we understand that period, we will develop some understanding regarding our period. And when we're going to go ahead and analyze the questions asked to prophets then, I think we could suddenly seek out answers for our questions today. Now, let's go ahead, and what we're going to have to do is a little bit of work. Number one, you're going to have to remember three names. Three names of Persian kings. Now, historians have many more names that make it a little bit more complex, but we're going to work with our tradition regarding three kings, but you got to remember their names. Okay, here we go. Number one is Koresh. We'll start with Koresh. Koresh, we're going to start. Cyrus. Okay, name number one, Cyrus. Name number two is an easy one, Achashverosh. So far so good. Cyrus, Achashverosh. Number three, Daryavesh. Darius. That's it. Right? That's the work. Now, Koresh, the Persian, he is going to get the credit. He's going to be even called the Mashiach Hashem. He's going to get a great title because he is the one that gives the green light to the people of Israel to return home to begin the process of rebuilding their temple. Unfortunately, the majority of Jews do not return. There are pioneers, there are great heroes, there's a Zerubbabel, there's an Ezra, there's later on a Nehemiah. There are some great people that made the journey back, but the majority of Jews stayed in Babylonia and in other locations on our planet. Now, as they are building the temple, they are having some challenges there. But there's enthusiasm. We're home. We're in the process of building. So they asked the question to the Navi Zechariah. Vahi bishnat arba, this was in the 4th year. They go ahead and they ask Zechariah the following. Ha'efke b'chodesh ha'chamishi kasher asiti ze kama shanim. Shall I cry on the 5th month as I cried in the past? Should we go ahead and continue considering Tisha B'Av a day of mourning when we are in the process of rebuilding? In other words, yes, we're rebuilding here, but don't tell me that it's a complete return. The majority of Jews are not back, and we know very well that to enter into this glorious period, we're going to need the majority of the people of Israel here. What's our status? What is our status, they ask. Good question. Zechariah is going to respond. You know, after the 1967 war, in one of the publications of the Bnei Akiva in Israel, So there was someone that wrote an article. His name was Hanan Porat. Played a very significant role in the Hityashvut, in the what is called settlements or dwelling places in Yehuda v'Shomron. And the title of his article was Ha'efke B'chodesh HaChamishi. What's our status? In other words, here we have reconquered Yerushalayim, Hebron, Shechem, Shiloh, Bethel. What's our status? Ha'efke. You realize a parallel here, that there are questions. Yes, we have not yet merited a Bet HaMikdash, but on the other hand, God performed this wonderful miracle that we have regained access to this beloved cities. Yerushalayim is reunited. There are questions that were asked 2,500 years ago, and there are questions that we ask today that are basically the same question. Now listen to the answer given by Zechariah. You know what he's going to answer? He's going to answer that, ladies and gentlemen, your focus is wrong. You're focusing on fasting. Well, let me tell you what you should really be focusing on is Dabru emet ishet re'ehu. Start speaking truthful. Emet umishpat shalom shiftu b'sha'arechem. Go ahead and seek out peace, seek out truth, unity, justice. Ishet re'ehu al tachshavu bilvavchem. Don't stop thinking negative thoughts about others. Unify as a nation. Don't ask me questions about fasting. Focus on your real problems. And I tell you, says the Navi, that there are days that are going to come that are good days. There are good days ahead of us. Optimism, a Jewish trait, believe it or not. Somar Ve'i, that the fast day of the 4th month, and on the 5th month, and the 7th month, the day will come, and there will be Lebet Yehuda L'Sasonu L'Simcha. There are going to be days of celebration. What I ask from you, my people, is Ha'emet V'Ashalom Ahevo. Go ahead and develop a love for truth and for peace. Focus on the right thing. Focus on the right thing. That should be your question. Now, his answer is not so clear about right now. He's talking about that in the future, worry not, all these fast days are going to vanish. And we want to know about, what about right now? He leaves us with a question, to some extent. And perhaps we are being told that in the future you're going to have that same question. We are not sure regarding our status. Is there a return? Yes. Is it a complete return? No. And the way, in this era, the way it manifests itself is that there are different movements within the Jewish world. And when I step back and look at the Jewish world and see the politics that exist in Israel, and I see different philosophies, I realize we are struggling because we are one body, and the struggle is simply because we are not completely sure. But what we are being told is analyze, and listen carefully, this is going to be the main theme. Analyze the period of the construction of the second Bet HaMikdash. Analyze what is happening then. You will develop an understanding of what is happening now. Okay, that's the main thing. Analyze that period. So let's analyze that period. That Ezra comes and he begins the process of building. They begin the process of building. But unfortunately, there are some individuals there that are not happy with it. They wanted to prevent the people of Israel from the construction project, from building the Bet HaMikdash. So we are told in the book of Ezra that at some point they were hiring and bribing officials, lehafer atzatam, that as right after Cyrus gives a green light, Koresh gives a green light for the construction of the Bet HaMikdash, what is taking place? There are hired individuals that are the official job to try to disturb. And this is taking place in the book of Ezra, we are told, Kol Yemei Koresh Melech Paras, throughout the days of Cyrus. And this is done for an extended period of time. Fine? Now, Cyrus dies. Who takes over? Who is the next king of the region? Achashverosh. Okay, Hamruk is doing that. Achashverosh. Comes at the Malchut Achashverosh. Now we remember him. because towards the end of his reign, there is a decree, lahashmid, laharov, ula'abed, to go ahead and uproot all of the nation of Israel. That's towards the end of his reign. He reigns for 14 years, and that's happening in the 12th year. We are told in the book of Ezra, listen carefully, Ubemalchut Achashverosh. In other words, first the verse tells us that you should know that throughout the career of Cyrus, what is taking place is that there are people that are trying to prevent the Jews from completing the Bet HaMikdash. Then we are told, Ubemalchut Achashverosh betchilat malchuto, at the beginning of the reign of Achashverosh. Katvu, they recorded a sitna. What is a sitna? You could call it some kind of devilish accusation. The work of the devil is Satan. Fatma, okay, so Fatma. Fatwa. Katvu sitna, they went ahead and they wrote some kind of accusation al Yoshvei Yehuda v'Yerushalayim. They wrote an accusation. What was this accusation exactly? So we are told that they accused the Jews of building the walls of Jerusalem, meaning Cyrus, the official permission was given to rebuild the Bet HaMikdash. The accusation is, in the accusations we are told that you should know. They send a letter to the officials in Persia. The Jews are not following orders, they are doing what they want, they are even building a wall, and they were never granted permission. And you should know, in those days, you build a wall, it means that you're trying to protect yourself. You're trying to protect yourself, you're trying to break away. You're trying to break away so you can forget about collecting taxes. You don't get the money, it's all about the money, even when you say it's not about money, and therefore, you, Persian Empire, they write in the letter, you have to be careful because these Jews are building a wall. And asks the Malbim and many other authorities, how on earth were they able to go ahead and write a letter and publicize that the Jews are building a wall when they were not? We know for a fact that they were not building a wall because only later in the days of Nehemiah they begin the process of building a wall and they talk about the fact that there's no wall. How did they lie about the wall? That is something that is asked by the authorities. How did they lie? How do they lie that there is a wall, that the Jews are building a wall? And that's what the focus was all about. You know what the problem was in Israel? They are building a wall. Quite fascinating. That was then. And what is now? I think we know it very well. The biggest problem is, why is there no peace in the world? Right? It is all because there is a wall. And before the wall, it was all because of the settlements. And we are going to go on and on. We'll listen to what we hear. Accusations, which are a sitna, the acts of a satanic force that we have to deal with. Katvu sina. This is what we are being told. Now, we get a little bit more clarity on the whole picture, but I'm going to first share with you a little bit of when I was able to put the pieces together of my thought. You know, the trip itself had some elements of fun for me as an individual. Right? There was lots of fun. Most of you saw the emails I sent out. It was an opportunity to connect with a few of my siblings because we always have politic talks about the state of Israel. And I remember my younger brother who spent a year there, last year. So he, after Yitzchak Shamir's funeral, he showed me with great pride a piece of paper. This is on Skype. In other words, it's right after the funeral. He Skypes me, and he picks up a piece of paper, and on the piece of paper it says, Shamur, or watched or designated, LeRosh Memshelet Israel, for the Prime Minister of Israel. Ask him, what is that all about? And he says, I was at Shamir's Levaya, at the funeral, and there were a few seats in front, and one of them was designated, reserved for Prime Minister Netanyahu. So right after everyone is leaving, I ran forward, and they were going to throw it out anyway. So he picked it up, and he has, as a memento, he has his little sign reserved for the prime minister. And I was jealous, right? Because he got himself this good piece of paper that was right there where Prime Minister Netanyahu's back was laying on. It was a lot of fun. He had a lot of fun. And I had to beat him out. It is a brother after all, right? You have to go ahead and be sure that you get one up on him. So the big event, which we were warned, in other words, I arrived in Israel. I did not have the privilege in flying in the Prime Minister's old jet. And the reason I'm saying it's an old jet because my other colleagues who had the privilege of riding, all they did was talk about the fact that it was an old 1980 plane. They were able to fetch a little bit. Maybe they were just being kind enough to try to make me feel good that I was not on the jet. But bottom line is, while others spend Shabbos in Ottawa, I spend Shabbos in Yerushalayim, not with you. In Yerushalayim. Also good, but I was in Yerushalayim. I arrived in Yerushalayim early Friday. I was able to spend it with my son Uzi, who is in yeshiva, doing very well in Kerem B'Yavna, thank God. And Motzei Shabbos, as he makes his way back to yeshiva, I transfer to the official hotel of the event of the visit of the Prime Minister, and that is the David Citadel. And they hand me a piece, after I'm told where my room is, I'm handed a sheet of paper, and I'm told that I have to be there for the first meeting. The first meeting is in 18 hours on Sunday, meaning 6 p.m. Sunday, which was very interesting. I thought it would be a bit earlier. I had Sunday for myself. There's always what to do in Yerushalayim, so don't worry about me that I was bored. On Sunday, I made my rounds. I visited some great places, Davin by the Kosel, and made it to Machne Yehuda. Come the evening event, and there is a briefing at 6 p.m. And during the briefing, the first thing we are told is that you got to know that Tuesday night is the big event. Tuesday night is the big event. Now, the Tuesday night event is going to be right here in the hotel, downstairs, meaning on the bottom floor and the basement. But, nevertheless, despite the fact that you are one floor up, come an hour and a half early. So we're like, can you repeat that, please? Yes. Despite the fact that all you got to do is walk down one flight of stairs, due to security concerns, come an hour and a half before. So it sounded very scary. Now, event number 2 on Sunday night, this is January 19th, was a reception given by MP Mark Adler and Kolel Chabad. Interesting, no? Kolel Chabad, Mark Adler. Now, Chabad has a very strong representation here in Toronto, and an even stronger one in the Prime Minister's office, it seems. Chabad has a very strong connection to him. So much so that when at the end of the trip, Wednesday night, when we were standing for pictures, so after I took a picture with the Prime Minister, which I'll get to, so there were a group of rabbis who joined in for another picture, and I was pulled back in. And there were, myself, some other rabbis, and there were rabbis also from the conservative and reform movements. And among them, there was a woman there. I forgot her name, a very nice lady, and she has a congregation here in Toronto, and she was wearing a hat. So the Prime Minister says that, this was a brown, stylish hat, and he said to her, your hat is close to the Chabad hat. Close enough. The color's not right, but it looks enough Chabad. That's what he said. And then he turns and he says, "What, you are conservative?" In other words, he wasn't sure exactly who we are. And Rabbi Bulker responds, "No, we're the Rainbow Coalition." In other words, you have here a little bit of everyone here. That was Rabbi Bulka from Ottawa who responded. So we had unity for a few seconds in the picture, believe it or not. We merited unity. So the Kolel Chabad has a very strong relationship with the Prime Minister, with Mark Adler, of course. There was a moving moment there, and that is that Mark Adler got up and he spoke at the David Citadel, Yerushalayim, magnificent weather, magnificent Yerushalayim in the background. And he gets up and he says that I'm the first MP that's a child of survivors. And here I am representing the great country of Canada as part of this delegation. It's a very moving moment for him, and it was moving indeed to see. In other words, we have to have the ability to say thank you. We are very good in identifying bad. We Jews are excellent in doing that, right? We've been doing it for 2,000 years because we had plenty of opportunities. We have to have the ability to identify the good. And there is good in Canada now. There is good in Canada. It's a reality. It is Baruch Hashem good. And we say in the morning, the Mizmor LeTodah, we have a Tehillim, it's a short one. Some of you stand for it, where we give thanksgiving to the Almighty. We have to go ahead and think about the things that we are thankful for, right? My mother, I was just talking to my mother now, and she mentioned that my father, Alav Hashem, used to say that the whole world would want to live in Toronto if not for the weather. That was my father's chachma. Meaning, my father loved Toronto. The weather was something that disturbed him. But the reality is that there is good, Baruch Hashem, a righteous government. We have to be thankful. And he expressed his akara sato for the fact that he represents a Stephen Harper government coming to Israel as a true friend, hakara sato. It was a very moving moment. But even then, it seems to be that every second statement that you would have one official talking about, there was a group from the Prime Minister's office. Everything was about the Tuesday night. Every conversation, they had to throw something in about the Tuesday night event. Okay, so it's Sunday night, and all they're doing is talking about the big event Tuesday night. Now, Monday, they had a speaker there in the morning during breakfast. Now, please don't tell anyone that they handed me this sheet of paper with my official program. In other words, different programs for different individuals. And this speaker who spoke Monday morning, I was supposed to be there. But due to the fact that I did not sleep throughout the night, right? I did not sleep throughout the night. This is Sunday night. Jet lag was wild. I even was able to watch the last few minutes of the Seattle-San Francisco football game. Right? Yemos HaMashiach, by the way, that in Israel, when I grew up in Israel, we had one channel. And there were educational programmings until 5:30 p.m. A little bit of entertainment, and everyone would watch the news at 9 p.m. with Chaim Yavin. That was it, and that was the end. The country would shut down. By 9:30, there was no one outside, the TVs were off. That was it. Now, it's Yemos HaMashiach, because believe it or not, I was able to find the game not on one channel, but two. So it just signed that something unique is happening. So I was up, I davened already by the Kosel. I had a very active, the night was busy. I made it went early to the Kosel, came back, and I was the first person in line for breakfast. It was a very unique, so come when the speaker, I was out, cold, for a few hours, 2-3 hours. So the next thing I did Monday was I joined the Prime Minister and the delegation to the Knesset. So we left at 2:45 for an address, listen carefully, that was going to take place at 6 p.m. Now, how long, you got that? 3 hours and 15 minutes for a ride from the David Citadel to the Knesset. How long does it take with traffic? 15 minutes?
Maybe.
Not even. So we got there very, very early, and that was one thing we did a lot. There was a lot of waiting. They put us in a room. They had a few cakes and some juice, believing that they're going to satisfy these Jews with less than what we had here. And they didn't even have the good thin addictives there. So you can imagine what happened. So it was a little bit shvach, a lot of socializing. I had the privilege, as a child, I knew the Knesset. It's really redone. But I have an aunt that used to work there, and I knew where to go. So I went down, I left the delegation, and I stood by the entrance to the actual, the chambers. And that's when I was able to meet a few of the Chavrei Knesset. It was all part of the emails I sent. And among them, Yair Lapid, you've heard of him? Yeah. Ruth Calderon, Rabbi Littman, who's from the Aguda, Yaakov Litzman, Dov Littman, a few of them, Amir Peretz, Nachman Shai. These are members of the Knesset that I'm familiar with the names. A brief conversation with two or one of them. Now, there's a few others, but when I come back up, so Larry Zeifman or someone else, maybe it was Moshe Ziegler, comes over to me. He's looking for you. Like, Who's looking for me? He's been looking for you back and forth. I've walked the crowd 4 times already, and I haven't seen you. But Terry Milevsky is looking for you, and he finally wants to meet you. And it was a great simcha that Terry Milevsky was able to meet me, and we had a big shmuz about our yichus. Are we related? What region we're from? He told me at least, a Jewish link. We took a chashuva picture together. So those were the people that you were able to meet. Then David and Fran showed up. That's when we met the ambassadors from Vietnam, and I got invited to Vietnam. You know, Michael, if I'm not joining him. And don't fly Malaysian Airlines. The Philippines, we were able to schmooze with a little bit. Did you see also the guy from Cameroon? He was the big fellow from Cameroon. I'm not going to give more description, but he's the one that I've mentioned to you here, that they have a committee of foreign ambassadors to Israel with head of that group, and the head of the group is the ambassador from Cameroon. Why? Because he's been there the longest. He's been there close to 20 years. And as the ambassador from Philippines told me, that his country forgot about him. He was there for so long. And the real shot is, if you have the option, what should I do? Should I live in Cameroon? Or should I be a VIP ambassador in modern state of Israel? Now you make your choice. Who would you want to live? So I think he made the right choice, and he's there. Had a brief schmooze with him about soccer a little bit, and then we come into the chamber, and I sit down. I had an uncomfortable moment. It's being recorded, I'll say it anyway. I had an uncomfortable moment there that I positioned myself at a decent seat. If you ever have, you could scan the crowd. And there were 2 empty seats next to me. And someone I know from a distance, like started motioning to save the seats for them. And of course, I'm put in a very uncomfortable position because 2 other people from another end come, and they got upset at me for trying to save the seats. It wasn't you, and I won't mention it. So anyway, things worked out. I found my seat there. We were able to identify the Chavrei Knesset. And Prime Minister Harper gave his speech. Okay, I'm going to return to his speech because my main goal now is to get to Tuesday night. Because Tuesday night is, after all, the most significant moment, because Monday, again, there were many warnings about Tuesday night. And we already had a feeling, because already Monday, when you went down to the basement, they started bringing in equipment and a metal detector and partitions and wires and security. It was Lebedik, so it was getting a little bit interesting there, and they're starting cornering off the main floor. So I realized that Tuesday night is going actually to be quite interesting. Now, at the event, when it comes to, where was I, Monday?
The speech, yeah.
Speech to the Knesset, which I hope you watched.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, you did watch the speech. I'll mention something. There was a dinner given back at the Citadel, and that was given by CIJA, Center for Israel and Jewish Affairs. There were other sponsorships. The wine was chashuv, a nice good wine. It was mamish like the mesiba of Achashverosh. That's not the connection to Purim. But the point is that it was a festive event. Tuesday morning, we heard at breakfast Michael Oren. I mentioned it already here. Michael Oren is an excellent communicator. Very brilliant man. When it comes to his view of the Middle East, he is not as right as many people here in Toronto. And some people got a little bit agitated because when I came back, I praised him. And then people followed something that he said. They weren't so happy. Reality is we need good communicators. Michael Oren is an excellent communicator. He's a very, very bright man. He is no extremist. And therefore, what he said regarding President Obama, he was extremely critical without spelling it out. But basically, when he was asked, why is it that Obama took no stand when in the streets of Tehran they were trying to overthrow the government, and when in Egypt the same thing is happening later on, Egypt, basically a friend and a person that brought stability to the region, he goes ahead and joins the crowd. How do you explain it? And he basically said, well, CNN was covering the one in Egypt and was not covering the one in Tehran, and that's how he establishes his policy. Now this is a terrifying statement. So if it would be written by Carolyn Glick, and you would see it here you would think, okay, this is someone that is to the right. We're talking about someone that is basically center, perhaps right center, making a very, very critical remark of the President of the United States. It's terrifying, but an excellent communicator he is. At dinner at night, Tuesday night dinner, among the many people we intermingled, was with Michael Oren, and he's a very, very kind man. When we I was standing with Rabbi Korobkin, and we complimented him about how he made his point and how excellent he was. He says, the crowd gets the credit. The reality is, they energize me. A very interesting fellow, and one that we should follow. Tuesday had as well the trip to Yad Vashem, which I mentioned. We went to the Western Wall, which you've seen footage of. You should have, David was there, right? You were there too, right? The excitement the Israelis had. They feel there's a recognition that there's something unique about the man. And then, 1 hour and a half before the big event, I leave my room for the journey, for the hour and a half journey. And by the way, I actually had a room on the main floor. So I didn't even have to wait for an elevator, but nevertheless, I gave myself an hour and a half. And I was machmir. I didn't bring one passport, I brought 2 passports, right? 1 in each pocket, just in case I need. And I come. And I was wearing my tag, and I became friendly. This for sure should be on tape. There's a fellow that works in Ottawa in the Israeli embassy. His name is Eitan Weiss. Does it ring a bell? Eitan Weiss. Eitan Weiss, I have no doubt that he does some other things on the side as well. Won't mention it when he's there in Ottawa. Very bright guy, there's a lot of charisma, smart guy. He was everywhere, behind the scenes. And the way he was interacting with specific people, I had a feeling that he's doing a lot of good things in Ottawa, period. I'm not spelling out anything, no one arrest me. I'm just sharing a feeling. So when I come to prepare myself for the hour and a half journey down the stairs, Eitan says, yeah, he's okay. So I immediately make my way down, walk through a metal detector, and the hour and a half journey took me less than a minute and a half. So I come downstairs, but then, and again, it was a lot of hype, there's security. But then I realized that you can't leave. Right, so you're downstairs, there's a washroom, Baruch Hashem, but that's it, because the room was closed, it's a bar, right, washroom, v'zehu, and I'm there basically saying, okay, how long do we have? Just an hour and a half, that's it. Or an hour, 20 or 28 minutes and 30 seconds. And I had to begin the process of, okay, what do I do here? So Baruch Hashem, Professor Robert Uman also is as Meshuggah as he also came an hour and a half early, an hour and 28 minutes early. Robert Uman is, the professor is, he got the Nobel Prize Game Theory. My older brother, who a little understands these things, which I of course don't, he says that it was recognized that Robert Uman deserves it years ago. But the fact is, he wears a big kippah, he's Israel, he's big beard, and he's right wing. He didn't. So for him to get it, despite his philosophical view, what? Devin Grohl, interesting. For him to get it, it's a very impressive individual. He's a man that's unique. Because there's a complex section in the Talmud that talks about a situation of a man who has 3 wives and has to give out 3 ksuvas. In other words, it's a mathematical, your type of stuff, right?
6 ksuvas, 92.
72.
72.
So
and that Haaretz had an article about that exactly.
Haaretz had an article on it. So he gives a lecture on using game theory to explain a section in the Talmud. But he introduces it, you get it on YouTube, by saying, listen, I don't believe that my wisdom reaches the wisdom of the rabbis. But nevertheless, I will try to share with you,